Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of eCoffee with Experts. I'm your host, Matt Fraser. And today on the show, I have with me Chad Agrawal. Now, Chad is the founder and CEO of Perfect Clicks, a full-service digital marketing and web development agency headquartered in Parsippany, New Jersey. He has a bachelor's of science degree in business administration and management. And instead of joining the corporate world upon graduation, he launched Perfect Clicks. He and his team have helped to establish over 80 brands from enterprise-level companies to leading startups. They have developed over 300 industry-leading websites with unique brand experiences and ranked over 50,000 keywords with Google search results. He also has a patent for software in the area of note-taking and productivity. When not working on marketing campaigns for clients, Chad enjoys spending time with his wife, Richa, and son, Kane. Thank you very much, Chad. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to share hopefully some very helpful information with everyone.
Yeah, well, pleasure to have you here. So I noticed in your journey, reading your about page on your website that you've had an interesting journey. Number one, I mean, so many people go and work. I met a lady, agency owner. She worked for 15 years in digital marketing. And before, some people lack that confidence to actually just jump in and start their own thing. And a lot of people aren't successful at it either because they don't know what they're doing. So I think it's a real interesting that instead of going that route, you just said, "To hell with it! I'm going to start. Perfect Clicks. Sorry, I'm going to start Perfect Clicks right out of the gate." So tell me a little bit about that. How that happened.
So I actually started out. I went to community college, and I wanted to transfer to a good university. Like most high school students, I don't think I was that focused, and I basically wrote an ebook. I had transferred from community college to NYU Stern, and I wrote an ebook about that process, and I ended up selling quite a few copies online. But it was because I was driving traffic to that website. That's what got me going while I was in college. So I actually started out a little bit early, got going with driving traffic and realized there's a whole industry to SEO and guest posts. And I was just hooked on the idea that I could reach the entire world. And so that's really what got me started. And then that spiraled into I'd say I was doing it on the side between school and then working a little bit for about a year or two. And then by 2013, 9 years ago is when we started Perfect. When I started Perfect Clicks, we opened our first office. At the time, it was in Suffern, New York. And then we went to a small office in Woodcliff Lake where we were there for a while. And then we expanded out to Parsippany. And Parsippany has been a great move for us.
All right, on. As someone who is not as familiar with that area, can you tell me where is it in location to one of the bigger cities?
Sure. So Parsippany is just about 25 miles outside of New York City.
Okay.
It's one of the it has one of the largest concentrations of Fortune 500 companies in New Jersey. It's one of those prominent cities in New Jersey. I highly recommend, and I'll actually talk about that today and under our topic about why Parsippany was just so important in terms of being here, central location.
Yeah, because I guess our topic for today is for digital marketing agencies, how to recruit and retain top performers in the digital marketing industry. Because your story a little bit, tell me, what were some of the challenges you faced when starting your agency back in 2013?
So I think like any agency owner, some of the first problem you have is getting customers, right? I think we were at an advantage where I was already driving traffic to a website that I owned. And I think that's important to do things for yourself. We're the real deal in terms of an agency because we actually own websites that have hundreds of thousands of page views. And we're really more of a media company in some sense. And then we take that and we brought that to the private sector. So we really have processes that nobody else has. And so I was able to learn on my own merits, right? And so I think that was a big deal because once we had those websites that were driving traffic, we could scale that out. But I was able to make mistakes and I think that's the tough part is just learning all the skills that you need to eventually bring that to market. And then Just like everybody else, it's you got to make sure that you have enough, you build the right relationships with the right clients, and that you're over delivering on everything that you promise.
Mm-hmm. What about staffing though? Like it's one thing. So if I may it's one thing to know how to, like, this is my experience. It's one thing to know how to do SEO. Like, for instance, I was the marketing director at a car dealership. It was one thing for me to know how to do everything that I did to achieve what I did, but it was another thing to be able to take what I could do, put it into a systemized process of SOPs, and then even get it down to the fact of the cost per action of how much time does that take to know how much money I should charge and how much I can pay my employees. So, how did you figure that out in that regard? Because like I said, it's one thing to know how to do digital marketing. This is my point. It's another thing to teach someone and have an employee come on board. What were some of your challenges with replicating yourself and bringing in staff?
Yeah, that's really tough, especially when you're small. You don't have a big budget.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to convince people that this is going to be a big company one day. Or that we're really just, we're doing more than just trying to rank and drive traffic. We're trying to impact people's lives. And so I think the biggest challenge is when you're small is to find the right people and to have less, because I think what happens is a lot of agencies will try to hire a lot of people quickly, and you're not set up for all the process and the infrastructure that's required. And that took a long time for me to learn, to bring in the right people.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you try, I read on your website, you tried subcontractors and outsourcing and it didn't work out. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So about going back a little bit, but 2013 to 15, we did a lot of subcontracting, a lot of outsourcing, and you can grow really fast that way. It's a good way to grow really fast, but you can't control the quality nearly as much. And so you're going to struggle if you really don't have all those core competencies, the most important processes to your business in-house. And so what we did was we said, all right, well, we're going to do without subcontracting and outsourcing, and we're just going to do it all in-house. And people who are doing it in the US and Canada are at a slight disadvantage because the costs are higher. But so that's where we have to be, 4 times as productive, 4 times as innovative. And we have to, our quality just has to be top notch, because the truth is that quality is seen, and now it's more transparent than ever.
Yeah, that's for sure. So how did you pivot? Like, what made you, from what I read, I understand you got rid of all the subcontractors and you got rid of outsourcing. What strategies did you use to find, the most effective for recruiting qualified staff to come on board and help you with this thing?
I got to be honest. It's very, very difficult. There's no silver bullet to do it. You have to interview, you have to hire. I think I was very lucky. I was very fortunate in the beginning to find a few key people that I really worked well with.
So chemistry is important.
I don't think agencies realize that 1 or 2 really great people that you work well with, you can grow and you can do a lot more than you ever imagined. You ever see that? And you see that a lot with startups that have 2 good partners, right? They can get a lot
for sure.
done. And so we were lucky enough. We had a few people, particularly one person that was with us for 4 years early on, from 2015 to 2019, and did a great job. And we worked really well together. So I would say in the beginning, when you're going from 1 employee to 5 employees, or a team of 1 as a solo entrepreneur, to just 1 to 2, and then that 1 to 5 or 2 to 5, those are big jumps. So that
huge
person is going to really impact, and almost like, when you're a smaller company, every hire matters more because they have a bigger impact on
that makes so much sense.
And so, yes. So when you're doing, that, finding that one person, it's a big deal. And then when you get to like 2 to 5, like our office in Woodcliff Lake only had, 5 desks. So that was it.
Okay. Yeah.
So then we sent it out to Parsippany, and we had 10 desks, and now we have 20 to 30 desks, which is great.
Oh, wow.
So it really takes time to find that one person, and you have to spend the time to find that person that's right for you, because they have to be able to complement what you're working with. And I think the big thing that, and as we go along in this, I'd like to talk about is the values that you start to shape, because the two people is going to determine who you need to be. And that becomes your company. And I think
feel free to elaborate on that. So tell me a little bit about that, developing the values of your agency and some tips on doing that.
So, in the beginning, you don't know who you are. You're one or two people, and you find different things that set you apart. And so what I grew up in a household where my parents worked very, very hard. I watched them work extremely hard. So to me, that was normal. So my standard of work ethic was just tremendous, I think, looking back now. And so I emulated that. So I aligned with people who also had a very strong work ethic, which I think is not speaking for everyone, but has fallen maybe a little bit out of style.
I agree with you.
Work ethic. So I think that was the first big thing that I found maybe in that first couple of years is people appreciated hard work. And there was nothing better than working hard with someone. When you're working together and you work well with somebody, I think that's one of the best feelings you can get that people might be looking for sometimes, that we talk about companies, delivering happiness and doing that. But where does that come from? And if we can search for really hard, if we can work hard at something and achieve something and serve others, I think that's where we started to get the beginning of what our culture was, and I think
so working hard and serving others. Those are good values.
Yeah. So working hard, high integrity, and then constant improvement. Those are our 3 core pillars. And then there's a lot of things that go into those. And we could definitely talk about some of that. We could talk about how we filter for some of that as well. And how
tell me. No. So for instance, how do you talked about finding someone who has the same vision, who has the same values, who has chemistry? Is there a process that you go through to like filter people out, like in regards to, like even starting with something that maybe seems so simplistic as to how you formulate your ads and where you advertise to get talent? Do you ask staff for referrals, or do you go out on sites like Upwork and post there, or Indeed, or things like that?
So we post on most of the traditional job platforms. I'll tell you, we have a very, very good filtering process to find people that align with our core values. And, we're very content first as an agency. And I believe most agencies should be content first. And maybe more promotion or social or ads driven. But if you're going to have an organic SEO approach, I think everything starts from understanding the brand and creating really good content. So the first thing we went out for, I think most people are looking for, is writers. I think that was the first thing that made sense to me. The truth is there's a lot of writers out there that want to write, but they may not want to write within marketing or for somebody else. And so there's quite a few ways to filter for that. We'll talk about that soon. But the point of this is that you want to look for writers, digital marketers, anybody who's in communications, public relations. You can really scale that out from just writing to there's a lot of different ways to attract people into content. And if you can filter skills of writing, you can actually teach people a lot. So we can also talk about
that's really interesting
that we have for teaching people as well.
Wow.
So that's the first thing
go ahead.
No, that's the first thing we look for is content.
Is this people to fill the hole for content? Yeah. What about in regards to salaries? Like, you mentioned something earlier. Yeah. Being a small agency. I mean, small agencies don't have a lot of money to pay the big salaries that maybe some people want. Do you think offering competitive salaries is important when recruiting staff? And how can you do that as a small agency?
So I think if you're a small agency and you can find the right talent, it's worth paying for. I think you should, even overpaying. That's the one thing that I've learned over the years. You can overpay for talent. We could talk about some of the issues of doing sometimes, but you want to be able to. But a lot of times, what you'll find is the talent that is available to a smaller agency may not have the experience necessary to warrant that kind of a pay grade.
Okay.
And so if you can have a very honest and realistic conversation about, well, this is where your experience is at. These are the skills and things that we're looking for, and we would like to train you. I think most people, there's a certain point where finances only makes enough of a difference, right? Most people are looking for meaning, belonging. They want to have a home.
That is so true.
And so I think if you can show that you have real relationships, that you have their interest at heart, and that you're willing to train them and invest deeply, I think that's going to have a much bigger impact.
It's interesting that you say that, and it made me think of hockey. And I know the New Jersey Devils, yes. And I know you're a hockey fan, and some teams will recruit because of the salary caps.
Right.
They will recruit younger players who are talented but hungry.
Right.
Rather than going after a Connor McDavid. Now, thank goodness I'm in Edmonton, and the Oilers sucked so bad that they were able to recruit and draft Connor McDavid. But it's not always the case. Sometimes in order to build a team, they need to bring in people who are younger from the farm teams and hungry. And they may not have as much experience, but you can train. Good coach can train. So what I'm hearing you say is that for smaller digital marketing agencies or agencies, you don't always have to look for the Ryan Dices of the industry. Not that he never get hired by anybody, because he's a, but what I'm trying to say is someone who's experienced is going to cost you more money. But if you have, you figured out the processes and the SOPs and the ability to train someone, if someone's trainable. So obviously there's so many things you've talked about here, looking for someone who's trainable and then using your skills. And instead of saying, hey, I know you want to make, I'm just making this stuff up, by the way, 120 grand a year, but yet your experience is only telling us that you should be paid 60 grand a year. But guess what? We'll train you. We'll give you the experience and we'll help you grow. And we'll value you, because you're right. The things that people value, according to a study done by some university, money was number 8 out of 10.
Right.
So you've just touched on so many things that make so much sense in regards to that and being able to train those employees. So how has that been in bringing in your experience, training people up? And
I tell you, the relationships I built is probably the most rewarding experience. I think I've learned the meaning of, you're not a true leader till you're developing leaders. And I think that's really where you want to be, is where you can eventually just make sure that you have leaders on your team. And that's really what you're looking for. And what is hard work? Hard work is just an indicator of character, right? It's a barometer of your work ethic. Just says a lot about who you are. And so if you're working with other people, they probably have a very high level of character. And so, but then there's a difference too, in terms of being a leader, having somebody work with you and then training them, giving them the skills, but then also the freedom to make sure that they're growing and helping the team and stuff.
Not micromanaging, because that can be a problem. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. So here's a question. For instance, I think this is the logical next question is you've found these people, you brought them into your agency, Chad, but what about retention? For instance, I talked to one agency owner and he kept losing employees. He went and got him. He went and picked them out of university and went so far as to train them. He went and became an instructor at a university to train people in digital marketing, to bring them as interns, to grow them up. And then he lost them after 2 years because they'd go and work for another bigger agency.
Right.
So how have you been able to retain?
So, well, there's a lot of things that we do. And I would I'll tell you about a lot of what we do once somebody's already here, but there's a lot of things you can do on too. Um, I think you brought up a good point of, if you can find people that are sometimes in college, they will learn more than somebody who's already graduated and knows it all. I think
teachability.
Right. And I've had a great experience with people who have kind of grown with us, and they value the training and the knowledge that we've shared, and they take that. And you know what? If they go somewhere else, I'm happy for them, because if they want to take that and they can go from there. But we have a process where we can pretty much teach people how to be a true professional, how to write content at a very, very high level. And writing content is not easy. Giving feedback on content is very difficult, because there's so many things that can go wrong. And you can say, oh, this is all wrong. And that's a very hard thing to take. So if you can create processes with the right questions, the right leadership, the right feedback, that all comes through. Now, in terms, so that plays into retention, because that's what's going to create the windmill of, and I've experienced that myself, of, you know, where you can't retain. So usually retention might be a problem of your onboarding, your feedback, and what people are experiencing as they come through that process. Because that's something that, as an agency owner, you can fix. Something not fix, and that you have to identify these things relatively quickly, is culture. So if somebody inherently isn't going to work hard, or isn't a high integrity individual, or comes in 90 days in, learns what they're supposed to do, but will not continuously improve, challenge themselves, and grow, they are not a culture fit. And that's a very big thing to distinguish. So you want to be able to make that judgment call as early as you can, because the truth is, one person in your company can change the culture, especially if you're a team of 7. So we talked about going from 1 to 2. 2 to 5 is one of the biggest stretches to make the difference, forming that culture. And we're in that 5 to 10 range, where it's easier to go from 5 to 10, or even 10 to 15, than it is to go from 1 to 5. It's so much easier.
Can you hold the phone? Can you repeat that? Can you repeat what you just said? It's easier to go.
It's much easier to go from 5 to 10 employees, or 5 to 15 employees, than 2 to 5. That jump from 2, because you have to have so much culture, process, and infrastructure to do that. So we're at a good point where we can really bring on talent if we would like to. We're in a great position to do that, but it takes a lot of work to get to that point, you know? And so I think making the distinguishment between, is this a culture issue, or is this a process, is going to make that difference for an agency owner, because you can fix what people are experiencing, but you can't always fix the culture. Now, you do things. Now, I could give you quite a few things that we do to reinforce our culture, or to teach.
Yeah, please do.
Sure. So, but just remindable, we'll have to come back to the retention piece of what we do on the back end once people are here for a while and they do. Let me give you some of the things that we do, though, for culture. So one thing we do every morning, 9 o'clock, we have about a 20 morning meeting, and we talk about, you know, just to touch base, what's going on. You know, if somebody's working remote that day, or if we're all in the office, we'll all talk and kind of just to touch. And I think that's done a big thing for our culture, because in that morning meeting, we're setting priorities. There's full transparency across the company of, what am I doing today? What's Brendan doing today? What's Allison doing today? Everybody knows what's going on and what are the top priorities for the company. Then what we also do is we tell a story of something that's motivational, or that reinforces our culture. Every morning, it might be a quote. And I think that's, you know, like, for example, yesterday I was at an event for a $500 million residential client. They're doing a huge project, and something happened at the event. And so my story for the day was how I messed up, you know, and that it was just very honest of, this is what I learned from failure. This is the experience I've gained, and how we need to continuously use any kind of failure to keep improving. And that plays right into. So something like that. And then we do win. right at the end of the meeting. We'll do wins of one thing that, really jumped out to somebody, to us at the company that happened yesterday. And it just reinforces, these are the things that we want to be doing. This is the kind of culture we want to have. This is who we're aspiring to be. And I think in a world that maybe doesn't think hard work is cool, or doesn't think that, doing more or taking on more responsibility is a good thing. And I think you're missing out on meaning. I think when you do stuff
oh my gosh,
hard work, you miss out on what is actually fulfilling. And so sometimes
you're so true.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from. That so the morning meetings are a big thing, and then we have a few others.
That's there's so many nuggets you just shared, and it's just, I don't know if you're a fan of Jordan Peterson or not. I know he's controversial. I don't know why, but his first rule in 12 Rules for Life is that responsibility brings purpose. And if you want to have purpose and you want to have meaning in life, take on responsibility.
And also, doing the hardest thing you can find is where all the opportunity is. Everybody wants to do the easy post. I get a lot of people who want to work for us, and they want to work on social media. You're going to get that a lot when you're filtering through your candidates and things like that. They're just want to work on and post on social media. And
I'm laughing because I hate social media.
Right. Exactly. Why not go for the thing that's really difficult? So, and I'll give this to the agency owners out there as a really. At some point in your growth, you're going to be labeled an SEO company. And the only way to break that is to offer other services. And so to our point about taking on really difficult projects and tasks that nobody even really wants to do, I found that has unlocked great opportunities. And then you can find ways to merge that with some of the fun stuff, because nobody's going to love exactly what they do every day, right?
Yeah,
but
no.
Especially if you're challenging yourself, you shouldn't like it that much because it's not good at anything that's new. But if you continue to work at really difficult things, you look back 90 days, what was really difficult for you 90 days ago is probably not so bad right now. And if you look back 6 months, what was difficult to you then is probably really easy now. So I think going after what's really difficult, it doesn't seem like it's a great thing, but it's the best way to go.
Wow, that is so. There's there's so many nuggets you shared. I think that a lot of agencies and even smaller ones are going to benefit from watching. So what about retention? Let's just go back there. How do you find, for instance, do you find that incentives and benefits help to retain staff and keep them happy, or are there other strategies or things that you found to be successful?
I'm glad you brought that up. I think, in addition to benefits, which I'll get into, before benefits, you have to have a path for people. I think you have to kind of let them know. You have to understand where they would like to be, and you have to understand where you would like them to be. So this way, you might have somebody who's really talented and is really hardworking. You have to stay ahead of them. And say, this is where I'd like to see you. This is what I'd like you to do. This is what I envision you. And that communication gets lost. And I've been guilty of that. And so what we introduced is, and what I strongly recommend to all the agencies out there, is doing a monthly check-in. And if you could do a monthly check-in where you're hitting on many of the goals, what's working well, what's not working well, what are the goals that we have, what are some of the priorities, what's going on in the business. I've actually learned so much from those monthly check-ins, more than me giving information. I've learned about what we need to do. And some of the best ideas that have made a very significant impact on our fulfillment, on our customer experience, on our content has come from those. And it's not come from me. It's come from our team. So I recommend monthly check-in. And as a follow-up, you don't want to do too many one-on-one meetings. It lessens it sometimes. But what I recommend doing is doing some sort of written form where you can follow up on those goals, because it continues that conversation from that meeting, that monthly meeting, of what you're working on. And it helps everybody stay focused on what's really important. So I think that level of communication allows for a few things to happen. One, it allows you to lets you know what's wanted, because everybody wants something different. Some people care more about benefits. Some people care more about compensation. Some people care more about responsibility and what is the work that they're doing. And so if you can listen to that, you're going to gain a lot of feedback, because I could tell you right now, oh, this benefit works for us, but it might not work for your team. So if I'm giving you the process to figure that out instead, right? And so keeping that dialogue open lets you find out what your team needs. And also it lets you give a path for, this is what you're doing now. I could see a few of these things you doing next month or the month after that. Just keep this in the back of your mind. I need help with this or that. So I think that's a really helpful tool that anybody can use.
Are there any, you talked about something like the 90, I'm not sure if it's the same where you are as where I am, but after 90 days, like day 91, it's very, very hard to fire someone. From the day 0 to day 89, it's a probation period. You had mentioned something about whether people would not work out. Are there any they passed through your interview process and so on and so forth, but is there any red flags that you have experienced in regards to, oh, this person's not going to be the right fit?
Sure. I'd like to hit on a few points with this one. We'll talk about the interview process in terms of red flags. I think that's a good thing. I'll give you some really good info there. Then I'd like to tell you about, how do you gauge that? Do you give somebody a week to figure it out? Do you give them 2 weeks? Do you give them 90 days? Do you give them 6 months? And how do you handle the firing or termination when you're in different situations? Because I've definitely been there. So first off, on the interview process, you have to have an assessment. I think that's I wasted hundreds of hours on not having an assessment, because you can interview, you can talk, you can figure out everything. There's a great culture fit, but and then when it comes to, doing some work, it doesn't happen. So we actually do a quick 15-minute assessment just to see how somebody can connect ideas and write. Okay. Before we even go through a screening phone call. And I really recommend doing an assessment, because then now you're at a base level of quality or grammatical understanding or skill set of where somebody's at. So once you screen, that's going to save a lot of the capability issue. If somebody has the required skills to do the job. And so doing an assessment does that.
Because that saves you tons of time, right?
Yes, it does. It really does. And it's very, very helpful. So if you do an assessment, then you can do a quick call. And if you do a quick call, the questions you ask initially are very important, because you can filter for culture very quickly. For example, we're a hardware company. One of the things that sets us apart is we find out a lot of data, and we can drive a lot of traffic, and we can grow a business, and we align, but we also work very hard. So if somebody doesn't work hard, they're probably going to self-select out. I don't have to let them go or terminate the position. They'll probably self-select out. So what we would ask is just, well, what's the hardest job you've done so far? People will tell you what they've done, what challenges that they've experienced. So you want to ask questions that are relevant to your culture. If you're a more data-driven agency, you might want to ask more about the insights that they can pull from specific data. But for us, specifically, it was more about, what have you worked hard at? What have you struggled at? What are the new challenges that you've taken? And ask about how they've improved at it. I mean, and people will tell you what they've worked hardest at. And it's very interesting to hear that sometimes, because there's a pretty large range of, what they view as hard work and what, might be hard work for somebody else.
Wow. That's very interesting. In order to ask the right questions about your culture, because you don't want to just say, "Hey, are you a lazy ass?" It's like, everybody's gonna say, "No, exactly. I'm not a lazy ass." Or do you work hard? Yes, of course I work hard. But when you frame it the way you've said, you can get answers that are more. It's kind of like sales. It's kind of like a salesperson.
And to go back,
ask, are you buying today? It's like, how far along are you in the buying process? Like, are you at the beginning, middle, or end?
So, and it's funny. It's the same thing we've learned with some of the feedback. Instead of just telling what should be done, how can we ask questions so people are learning that process? But we could maybe talk about that in another piece. I want to make sure we get. Yeah. So we got the interview for self-selecting out. How do you know that you have whether it's 1 week, 2 weeks, or 6 months? How do you keep? And I've been on both ends of that. I've given a week or two to figure it out. I've given a month. I've given 90 days. I've given longer. And what I've learned is you need to have really honest conversations. And if you give somebody a really honest conversation of why something isn't working out, you can set real goals and then talk about what goals are important and why those aren't being met. So I don't think there needs to be a hard stop. I've noticed overall, I can tell within 2 weeks to a month that, somebody's going to work out or not. But I've given people much longer. And to be honest with you, it depends on your position. As a smaller agency, you probably don't have the luxury of doing that. You have to be quick.
Yeah. But I heard someone say, when you're first starting out in agency or business, hire slow and fire fast.
Yeah. And that's an interesting one. And I know I've heard that too. And to be honest with you though.
Yes, please.
I've actually evolved from that statement, because to me, I think, and we've had people who have worked 3 to 6 months who maybe I knew might not work out, or they're growing. I think if you're in a position as an agency, if you're large enough to invest in people, I think they feel that. And I think there's relationships that can be built. You can learn from everyone. And what it does is it forces you to improve your process. And so the more you do that, you might find more success keeping people for longer and finding that there's an appreciation level that can be found with that. So I actually have pulled back from the hire slow, fire fast. I will fire when it's, if it's a integrity issue, like, with content, any kind of plagiarism, or if there's something major problem with the team, or, integrity for us is zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance.
But as long as somebody's improving and hitting their goals and they want to be there and there's a culture fit and you believe in that person, why wouldn't you make that investment? I think that's, so I think it's definitely worth it if you have the means. It may not always work out for you financially. And in many times it has not worked out for us financially, but I think it's the right thing to do. And I think if you do that, the times that it does work out, you will not only have gained a team member, a friend, somebody who's part of the family. And those are the best. Those are the best people, the ones who are really with you. And that's the kind of agency I think everyone would want to have.
Oh, I think probably the type of business everyone would want to have, let alone agency. But I totally agree with you. Are there what can you do to make the workplace more appealing for top performers in your agency? Yeah.
So that's great. I'm really glad you asked that, because that brings into that retention piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going off of you have these check-ins. So you have a dialogue going of what they need and where you're going as a company. And I think you hear a lot of big company execs talk about it, having a vision, having a big goal, which is where you're servicing. But I think finding meaning in what you're doing and finding challenges, staying challenged, and not being too comfortable. The other things that we've done is opened up new positions and new roles to facilitate that growth and to make sure that you're not doing the same thing. Nobody wants to do. I personally don't even want to do the same thing, even at a 6-month clip, right? I think you have some people come out of school and they expect everything to happen in a few weeks. And you have some people understand that things really happen on 6-month to 1 year basis. And we have reviewed on semi-annual basis to talk about some of those things. And so what we've done is we've introduced increased responsibilities, but then also other opportunities to partner with the business. So one thing we do differently is we also have a profit share. So annually, we do a profit share, which
That's
goes
so
up
smart.
401k with a 401k match, and then additional profit share distribution to everybody in the company based off of like their salary and hours and things like that. That's a huge, having a profit share is a huge thing because I think it gives ownership, right? That gives. There's a couple other things.
So smart. Like, you know, Home Depot, that's how Home Depot grew. They allowed their employees to purchase shares in the company or profit share. You know, one of the largest construction companies in the world, which is headquartered where I live, PCL, and they do construction projects all over, including the States. They eventually took their entire company. The entire company is employee owned. It's not even owned by the people who started it. It's 100% employee owned. And when somebody shows up late, they get in crap from their coworkers because you're costing the company money.
There's buy-in, right? Yes.
There's buy-in. And so when you're talking about offering profit share, revenue share, I mean, whichever, the principle, gosh, that is so smart. You know, and so to retain, that's just.
There's two other things
right there. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing we do is we do an annual bonus at the end of the year, which is just proportional to what we're doing. That's fine. But the other big thing that we introduced that helped us, if I could tell a quick story, we have a lot of.
Go ahead.
We've worked with merchant partners or IT partners and people who maybe don't do a lot of SEO or websites or digital marketing, don't do CRM stuff like we do. So we'll partner with them. And eventually it got to the point where we had even some clients that would refer us some really deals that we would not be able to solicit on our own. They only would come to us. And
from referral.
So we basically said, you know, we're going to open up a referral program. And what would be the best way to have a referral program, right? If I could have a 50-50 split with you, I think that would be the best deal ever. But then
that's an amazing deal.
Right? That would be amazing. And so, but you get into the profit share, you get into all this, and it gets messy. So what we figured out is we would give a 10% gross recurring.
Oh, wow.
Which is essentially equivalent to 30 to 50% profit off of clients that you bring in. And usually, you know, if it's a website, you know, it's a one-time thing. But usually the people we do websites will actually do marketing with us and SEO. But a lot of the contracts, some of the larger contracts that we brought in, you know, and that's recurring to you as long as you're with the company. So, I mean, that's you talk about having the profit share and then having some other incentive to bring it in. And then we have partners so we took that partner model and we brought that in house. And so that's a really big thing that we're proud of as well. And we think it's going to be a really good thing as well.
Wow. Was there one more thing? I can't remember.
It was just the profit share.
So you talked about referral program.
And then we do have some bonuses and stuff like that. And I would say there's a lot of things that we do just in terms of celebrate culture. I think that's the number one thing, because if you really align with that culture and you believe in who you're working with, why would you leave? Why would you leave? That's
absolutely.
Bring it back. That's why those hockey teams will invest in younger talent, because when you're with a team and you have a family, you're not going to leave just because somebody offers you $2 more.
Exactly.
You're in it and you have responsibility and you're becoming a leader, or you are a leader and there's more that you can do. So I think there's a lot of opportunity that we can provide, and that fixes retention from the hiring point to the onboarding to like somebody who's really knocking it out of the park and, you know, as part of the family.
That's amazing, man. You've shared so many nuggets here. Is there anything else that you want to add?
Anything else?
Well, how about I frame it this way? What's the one big takeaway? What's the one big takeaway you want listeners to get from this episode?
So just the big takeaway is, make your company accessible to everyone. I think, if you can brand yourself so that people know what you do, but they're not working for you because of a big number or something that's like just flashy, but because of the culture that you built and who you actually are. And I think that's different for everyone. And I think it's sometimes we're at a disadvantage to be a hard work, high integrity, constant improvement company. But I've learned to be like, that's okay because that's who we are. So
and that's who you will attract.
And that's and what works for your business. And then just keep open lines of communication and don't be afraid to believe in people and have faith that that you're making that investment and that they're even if it doesn't always work out, just have faith that you're still doing the right thing. Helping them.
Hey, Chad, how can our listeners connect with you online?
Awesome. You can definitely follow me on Twitter at Chad Agrawal. And so if you guys can connect with us, Perfect Clicks on Facebook. We're available on facebook.com/perfectclicksllc. And you're welcome to email me directly at chad@perfectclicks.com. I'm open to partnering with any agencies, doing any mentoring, coaching, or anything like that.
That's awesome.
We do a lot of, if I could, we do a lot of. We do it all in-house, and we have websites that we own that have over 6,000 blog posts that drive hundreds of thousands of page views. And a lot of agencies we've written for Neil Patel, Jay Frog, like a lot of big name industry, SEO industry names. And so if you ever needed content or any services, we're happy to partner.
Oh, fantastic. Hey, thanks for sharing. Of course, you're also on LinkedIn as well, right?
Yes. And of course on LinkedIn. That's right.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. There are so many nuggets that you've shared that I think would be of tremendous value to our audience who watch these episodes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. It's been a pleasure as well. You have a great day.